which law should they follow? Let's say in case in the future somebody like say should Sharia law run in parallel with the constitution. What do you think of this? Should there just be constitution, or say in the spirit of tolerance there should be Sharia law as well?
Well, there are already Sharia courts in Britain that run. I mean, there's a whole controversy and a lot of press are worried about. I mean, look, the traditional position of Islamic scholarship and Islamic legal theory is that you follow the law of your land as long as it does not violently violate your own Islamic principles or force you to do things that would violate your Islamic principles. So that has always been the position, and that's what's been followed by most Muslims in non-Muslim countries throughout history, from the very first moment when the first Muslim immigrants arrived in Abyssinia in Ethiopia in 622 AD. Well, no, sorry, before 622 AD. But on the specific issue of the Sharia law point, I mean, yes, the media have got very excited about this idea of the Sharia law. I personally am not a fan. That's my own view. I'm not imposing on any people. But having said that, I do believe in equality. And I do believe that if one faith community, I'm not a fan of faith schools either, I wouldn't send my daughter to an Islamic school. I respect the right of those who do. But here's the issue. People go on about Islamic schools. I'm saying, if you're going to have Christian Jewish schools, then you should have Islamic schools. You can't have double standards. Similarly, if you're going to have religious courts that operate outside the legal system as a way of arbitration, remember they don't have binding, they don't have the power to impact on criminal law, they are totally voluntary. They're voluntarily entered into, for example, when a Sharia court does a divorce, it's at the voluntary request of both parties, neither side can be forced into it. But again, the same thing happens in the Beth Din, which is the Jewish court system, which is also covered by the Arbitration Act. The same law, which covers extra legal courts and extra legal arbitration, applies to the Beth Din, and they apply to the Sharia courts. If you're going to get rid of one, get rid of the other. Same thing with halal meat. If you're going to ban halal meat, fine. Ban kosher meat as well. You've got to have some uniformity, otherwise you will have people like me saying, you are picking on us, you are discriminating against us, you are demonizing us. Because that's my real worry here, this idea that you just highlight and pick certain things out from certain communities and direct on it. I mean, with regard to specific courts, to answer your question briefly, I mean, from what I've seen, some of the things that happen in those courts are slightly dodgy, some are not. But I don't know enough about it, and I wouldn't trust an investigation from the Mail on Sunday, which went undercover there. Because of its track record.
Okay, one question from patient to Adnan.
Yeah, you mentioned some examples where there was blatant lies and by some communication like or whatever. Now considering that like when celebrities have allegations they often seek legal action.
Yeah.
But we don't really hear about that when we start looking why there's legal action being taken against.
It's a good question. Actually, legal action is taken. I mean, one example I give you that we investigated when I was up doing that film in 2008, The Sun, I don't remember, The Sun did a big story. They got camera phone images of a bus driver who pulled his bus over, I think it was in Slough or somewhere in that area. He pulled his bus over and told everyone to get off the bus so he could pray. All the passengers had got off the bus and they went, they filmed him, etc. And The Sun went with this story, huge, a big story, I remember on the BBC website, etc., etc. Turns out, not true at all. The guy actually was told, as is often the case, those of you who've travelled on buses recently will know, there's this nonsense where you get two buses at the same time and one bus is told to stand down. And he had been radioed to by his headquarters and told, pull your bus over, you're running late, there's another bus running, everyone transfers onto that bus, we're taking your bus out of service. So he had asked them to remove the bus and explain this to them, and once they were off the bus, he was just hanging around, so he decided to pray on his bus with no one on it. That turned into he told them to get off the bus and stop the bus like a madman. He sued The Sun. He won. The Sun removed the story. The link is no longer on the Sun website. Because it was so egregiously wrong. It was so wrong that they had not a leg to stand on. Inayat Banglawala was, there was a story, Muslim Council of Britain, former spokesperson. He's won about 3 or 4 cases. He's doing very nicely for himself. I'm winning all sorts of cases. I'm waiting for my own have a go. But, he, for example, there was an intruder in his house, and he stabbed him. I think they had an altercation, and I think Inayat ended up stabbing. I don't know how Inayat stabbed anyone. He's very small and wiry guy. But he stabbed this intruder. And the Mail on Sunday did a story about kind of, very cleverly written. Well, not that cleverly written because they lost. I think he definitely won an apology, if not damages, where they implied that he had kind of gone crazy and stabbed some random person. So it does happen. It doesn't happen as widely because, again, our community is not very good at standing up for itself. It's not very good at organising itself. Doesn't have enough well-trained lawyers in its midst, etc., etc. But yes, libel law is, in the current climate, is a way to go. And patently false stories are published about people.
the last 5 minutes. There's no question here. Okay, Umar.
Yeah. In response to your the first question about how we should act towards the media, a lot of people nowadays, when they become large speakers and whether they give one talk or 100 talks, whether they're very religious or not religious at all, what happens is they start getting these titles as hate mongers, as you said, and whatnot. Islam believes that this life is limited and the afterlife is eternal. Don't you think that the time is better spent in not trying to learn how to be a good public speaker, or not trying to learn how you can debate your religion or how you feel about something, but instead in mosques and in classes and places where you can learn about Islam and learn about religion, and then you can lead by example, which is what's taught to us by our elders, which then, our actions speak louder than words.
I agree with you to an extent that leading by example is very important, and yes, no doubt about it, actions do speak louder than words, no doubt about it. But as I said at the start, I work in the media. I very strongly believe that words have a huge power. The pen in the current climate is much mightier than any sword or any action at the moment. And I think it's all very well saying, I don't mean to be flippant or provocative. Well, I do a little bit, but people in Bosnia might have said, well, we were just minding our own businesses. We weren't speaking about anything. People in Gujarat might have said, we were just living as Indian Muslims, and then 2,000 of them butchered in pogroms. I think you can't just cut yourselves off and live in a mosque and sit on a prayer mat and hope for the best and think that society around you, nothing will change, and people won't come for you, and people won't attack you. I don't think Islamic history, just getting into if you look at Islamic history, look at the time of the Prophet, etc., that never happened in any of those periods. In all of those periods, you had people speaking out, you had people taking, social activists, you had people taking stances. I don't think the idea that you can just learn about your religion and pray, and even if that's the case, there's also an Islamic argument that you should go out and spread that.
If you don't mind me kindly,
Please.
what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that you should cut yourself off from the rest of the world, but in the sense that a lot of people are out there debating on TVs, asking questions on question time, and out there doing speeches, and you go on YouTube millions of videos. But those are the same people that don't know don't know the 5 pillars of Islam. They don't, and that's Islam. It's about every field. These people don't know anything about what they're debating about, and it's just.
I agree. Okay, well, let's unpack that very quickly, because it's an interesting question you asked. One is on the hate monger thing. I agree with you. I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I joined the New Statesman in June. A right-wing website got hold of all sorts of videos of me in a mosque giving a speech, clipped out one sentence out of context, and said this guy's a crazy extremist, etc., etc. All sorts of nonsense, and I had pictures of me saying I'm like Bin Laden's cockroach, etc., etc. Unfortunately you have to grow a thick skin very quickly, and you have to hope that your wife and your mother don't go online and see these kind of things. This is the kind of that's life, unfortunately. And some of us choose to do that and put up with it. Some don't. That's fine. And I would advise any one of you who is hoping for career in the media and is a Muslim, get a thick skin, or you won't survive very long. But having said that, on the separate point about not knowing the 5 pillars of Islam, well, you're right. On a specific point about Islam, there are a lot of people who talk about Islam, but let's take Islam out of the equation for a moment. Let's take another issue. Let's take the issue of civil liberties. Let's take the issue of when the government was trying to raise the limit from 42-day detention to 90-day detention without charge. Now you had Shami Chakrabarti of Liberty, you had some Tory MPs and Liberal Democrats who were out there leading the charge. Muslim groups too were backing it because they knew that. Where was the Muslim lawyer? There are Muslim lawyers. I've met loads of them. Where were they coming forward, using their legal expertise, using their knowledge of law and their eloquence that they've been taught to speak out on an issue that disproportionately affects and harms the Muslim community? Now, with all respect, they don't need to know about the 5 pillars of Islam for that, but they do need to know how to interact with the world around them in order to speak out for issues of justice, equality, etc., etc. So I take your point. I'm not telling everyone to get up willy-nilly and go out and give speeches. That's one of the worst things about our community, that everyone seems to think that they are experts on Islamic law and history, and then they pontificate and preach to others. That's a whole separate debate. I'm talking about much wider interaction with the society around us, and especially on some of these political, economic, social issues that I referred to in my talk.
I'm afraid that we're out of time. I'm really sorry if you have any further question. But I really want to thank Mr. Mehdi Hasan for a talk that was so captivating that we were scared, we laughed around, but more importantly, he knows that what we have to do. He has basically told us, he has showed us the way, and now we have to put that into implementation. Before we end, I just want to inform you that he has some refreshments outside, so please help us out there. And also, as many of you today took out your time from a busy routine, sacrifice some other events. So as a gift, these current copies of the new statements, I shall be giving 10 free copies to those who will be contacting us through email faster. So the first 10 requests we get. So our